you've got to take responsibility. What have you been doing with your border for how many years?
Before we start, we need to tell you up front we are not a licensed financial planning, accounting or law firm. This is simply an education program which will give you factual information. We do not give any general or specific advice around finance, business, investing, options trading or anything else. That is not what this presentation does. Please see a licensed financial planner when it comes to any investment advice you need.
This is a big week as far as international relationships are concerned with the United States because the tariffs kick off. Trump tariff policy, and immediately 3 countries are affected by that. We're going to have a look at the implications for them and their kind of pushback in relation to that as well. But first, before we do that, let's have a look at what his policy actually was. We've got a slide of this and what he's been... do we call it trumping on Truth Social or truthing? It's more truthing, isn't it?
Yeah, I do like trumping though. That's pretty good.
Is he
blowing your
on
own
Twitter
trumpet
as well? Like, is he dual broadcasting onto Twitter and Truth Social?
He is, and it's hard to keep track of which one he's saying what on. But you can see on the bottom of the slide if he's retruthed it. That's it. They don't call it a retweet. It's a retruth.
We're inventing verbs and things here now.
Yeah.
That's what Democrats have been inventing genders. So we must all invent some verbs.
Oh, it's so true. Hey, great to see the messages coming through. Really fantastic. G'day to everybody there. G'day, Mark. Fantastic to see Glenn as well. And as I said, we've said hi to Taz, who is just wonderful. And we did name her a resident lefty, but I don't know. Well, I don't know.
I think I turned her into a Republican.
I'll tell you right now. I think she's far deeper than a lefty, that's for sure. All right, are we ready with the video, mate?
As you can see here, this is a big comment as far as what is going on in terms of the tariff. He calls them the tariff lobby now, headed by the globalists. And always wrong Wall Street Journal is working hard to justify countries like Canada, Mexico, China, and too many others to name contribute to decades-long rip-off of America, both in regard to trade, crime, and poisonous drugs that are allowed to so freely flow into America. Those days are over. Caps. The USA has major deficits with Canada, Mexico, and China, and almost all countries owes $36 trillion, and we're not going to be the stupid country any longer. Make your product in the USA, and there are no tariffs. Why should the United States lose trillions of dollars in subsidizing other countries, and why should those other countries pay a small fraction of the cost of what USA citizens pay for drugs and pharmaceuticals, as an example? This will be the golden age of America. Will there be pain? Okay, sorry. Will there be some pain? Yes, maybe, and maybe not, but we will make America great again, and it will be all worth the price that must be paid. We're a country that's now being run with common sense, and the results will be spectacular.
Oh, speaking of spectacular, the fact that you can see that screen and read it from there, that's spectacular in itself. Well done, mate. Well done. Look, Trumpy is amazing. What can you say? As a guy many years ago I couldn't actually stand. I
hate to say I still can't stand him.
Oh no, I don't know. Now I think I'd hang with him.
What's your bloody beef with him? What's wrong? 2015,
around there, I believed the hype, right? Okay. I did.
You worked in media. How can you believe their hype?
That's because all the honest people who work in media told me that's what I should think. You see, that's right.
No, I just don't like his personality. Like, I love what he's doing. Don't get me wrong. I think he's an amazing president. I'd love for him to be the Australian president. But if I had to pick like someone to go have dinner with,
sure,
I'd pick people like Eric Clapton first. Just Trump's not in my anywhere near my top 100. Michael Jordan, absolutely, I'd pick Jordan over Trump.
What's the problem with Trump's personality?
It's probably his eyebrows or something. Like, there's no basis for it. It's just, how sometimes you meet someone and you just don't click with them? Trump's that for me.
All right.
But there's absolutely no basis for it.
Hello to, is it
the Truffle Shuffle?
There we go. That's very cool. Let's go and talk about this. Now, this is quite a comment, right? Okay, that's quite a comment.
The Truffle Shuffle?
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Say that 10 times quickly. But, okay, Derek, what are your thoughts about, there's so much to unpack. But, okay, essentially, I know there's going to be a bit of pain for the US. I reckon there'll be a flow on a bit of pain for Australia as well.
We'll get to that. Okay. We'll look at the Australian fears at the end there, because this is huge. I want to get through it by country, if we could. Let's have a look at Mexico's first response to this. So let's go south of the border. Now, you got to remember, where have all these illegals been entering the United States?
Yeah, sure.
Mexico. So, I mean, their pushback, they put out, and you have to go through the translations of what they're tweeting on X and all this sort of stuff, if we still call it tweeting. But they basically blame the thing back at the US, saying you've allowed high-powered weapons to come into criminal groups in our borders. Right? That they've hit back with that. They've said that in 4 months, our government has seized more than 40 tons of drugs, including 20 million doses of fentanyl. It also arrested more than 10,000 people linked to these groups. The US government, if they want to address this or fentanyl, they've got to do this internally and address it internally. You've got a drug problem, this sort of thing. They could start a massive campaign to prevent the consumption of these drugs and take care of young people, as we've done in Mexico. They go on about that. Mexico, and then they put this in: we don't want confrontation.
No.
We start from collaboration between neighboring countries. Mexico not only does it not want fentanyl to reach the US, but anywhere. Therefore, if the US wants to combat criminal groups that traffic drugs and generate violence, we must work together in integrated manner. So they've kind of pushed back with just words. And I really don't think it's going to go very well for them in that respect, because I mean, you've got to take responsibility. What have you been doing with your border for how many years?
Well, actually, this kind of goes back to what we are just saying about Trump. Okay, I don't particularly like a lot of his words, but I love his actions, and I very much judge him on his actions. And where are the actions here coming from the Mexicans? Why are they not actually taking action to stop and to slow down the movement through the border?
There's an awful lot of bullshit there too, to be honest. Because
there always is.
Because what's this? Oh, we just want to have a collaborative relationship. Like what? What a grand idea! I wonder if that's been tried before. What are you talking about? You know, personally, as you all know, I think that the drug should just be legalized. Right, that would solve the issue immediately.
Fentanyl. You kidding?
No.
So dangerous.
Since Reagan went on the war on drugs, what's happened? Has drugs gone down? Drug use gone down?
No.
What you've done is you've now made it so that the criminals can make a profit out of it.
But you've also got
that all that money gets used to manipulate and lobby government to bribe corrupt politicians,
to buy arms and
so just legalize the bloody thing then.
But the problem is that you've got the social dynamics, Shaq. You've got the people just smoking it left, right, and centre. Very highly addictive substances, which often leave the harder drugs later.
What's harder than fentanyl? But why doesn't that happen in Amsterdam then? But just leave that aside for a minute. If the claim for Mexico is that they haven't worked with America, you didn't have a collaborative relationship, America's been going down there and to other countries in South America for decades. So like something has to be done. Now, I do think, yes, there is some argument there that this is the US's problem. It's an internal domestic issue. They should deal with it. But on the same token, a lot of this stuff is coming through the southern border. Yeah. So it's absolutely fair and reasonable to say you guys need to fix it.
I agree.
Like he did with the migrants, right? As soon as he said, if you guys don't sort this out, I'm going to shut the border and I'm going to put tariffs on all the rest of it. All of a sudden, the migrant caravans just disappeared. Right?
Yeah.
So...
No, understandable.
Just quickly going back to Shaq's point with drugs as well. If you have a look at things like MDMA, they're amazing antidepressants. It's all the stuff that the legal criminals try and like space it out as much as possible. It's all the stuff they're adding, like the glass powder, the rat poison, all that actually causes a lot of the problems. MDMA is not that bad of a drug. It's actually very, very beneficial if used in the correct way.
Okay.
Well, even if we talk about fentanyl for a minute, there's some argument that the major cause of it. I don't want the conversation to steer towards this, but there's some argument there that people go into hospital, they get given very hardcore painkillers, right? And then the doctors are told that they can't prescribe them anymore. So the patient's then left addicted, with nowhere to go. Well, what are they supposed to do? So then they go and try to get it on the street. So they get dirtier drugs. Then they get more addicted. And then they start hitting things like fentanyl. So if you legalized it and monitored it and had proper medical professionals, if such a thing exists, then perhaps you would actually solve this issue. And it's worth noting that we've had drugs legalized. We used to give cocaine tooth drops and heroin tooth drops to little toddlers.
Well, what was Coca-Cola made out of?
Exactly.
So I don't think it's going to be as bad an issue, but that's irrelevant. People can make their own decision on that. The issue is, what should the United States do to Mexico?
This is the interesting part too, in terms of the percentage of the tariffs. So for Mexico, it's 25%. For Canada, it's 25%. And for China, it's 10%.
Yes.
So this is a very interesting kind of statement. He's obviously trying to attack their back pocket and saying, hey, I'm going to hit you where it hurts in finances. Maybe that will get you taking action. That's what I really see going on.
Yeah, and look, am I right to guess that, if they actually toe the line, do the right thing, that the US will drop the tariff down to 10%?
Well, as they're saying, they're pleading, let's negotiate. And I think that's exactly what he wants.
Well, if they toe the line, there's your negotiation right there.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. If China's only got 10% tariff, does that mean that China is likely to hand over the Panama Canal?
But the bigger question would be, why doesn't China buy the goods from Canada right?
Yeah.
And then sell them because then they've only got 10% tariff and Canada's got
15% markup.
So you get around the.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Mr. Free Enterprise right here. There's always an angle. I like that.
Oh, we've got a truffle shuffle.
Let's
that's
bring
a
some of these
message and a
comments up.
half.
Let's have a look.
All right, so my eyes are terrible, so let's make it big. Trumpy is applying pressure on real issues. WW Trump vows to cut off funding to South Africa until an investigation into the alleged mistreatment of certain classes incomplete. Hashtag South African.
Well, let's not tiptoe around it by saying certain classes.
We don't tiptoe around anything.
White
we got two fat Indians right here. So.
White people in South Africa are being brutally oppressed from what we're seeing in the media. And the West sits there and goes, oh, well, Black Lives Matter. Look, the terrible history, the terrible things that have happened in South Africa, but taking it out on some white kid who's got nothing to do with it. From what I'm saying, I haven't been in South Africa, but it does sound pretty bloody bad.
Really
and last time I was in Dubai, I saw a whole heap of white South African kids that had rushed out of South Africa to try to start life somewhere else because they've got no opportunities.
Well,
there.
Australia had an opportunity to help that out, get a lot of white South African farmers into the country when a lot of our country towns are really, really struggling. But instead, we passed up the ability to get some really good skilled migrants, and instead New Zealand picked them up. So well done, New Zealand. So
there you go.
Australian government seriously dropped the ball on that one.
All right, I'm going to hand pass over to Derek because he's got the computer.
This issue is really, really dangerous for both Canada and, of course, Mexico, because their biggest buyer, the biggest country that imports their goods is the United States. So they are on the back foot here. Let's have a look at what Mr. Trudeau, who still is kind of acting as Prime Minister, until they find another leader to replace him.
He does a lot of acting. Yeah.
Well, it continues here. And let's have a listen to what he's saying.
I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Okay.
This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives. Ce soir.
So the issue is 77% of Canada's exports go to the US. 84% of Mexico's exports go to the US. They're not going to win.
No.
They're not going to win this battle.
If I was Trump, no, I won't put it like that. Mate, Mr. Trump, because I know you watch this show all the time, my suggestion to you is that you should actually be a bit kinder to Canada and help them out and tell them, don't worry about tariffing us. You don't want our goods? Fine. I'm going to shut the border. No goods from America going to Canada. You want to play around? What was it? FAFO?
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's muck around Canada.
But things are going to change a lot in Canada in the next few months because let's face it, Trudeau's going. He's going to go visit Daddy's family in Cuba. Right? He's gone. Right?
Or he could go hanging with Epstein because he knows too much.
Very, very likely. So there's going to be big changes politically in Canada. I mean, I can see the Conservative government in Canada getting along a lot better with Trump, let's face it, than Trudeau.
Of course.
Right?
So Pierre, what's his name? Pierre Polivet or whatever.
I just can't pronounce his name.
I've been watching his features and he's brilliant. He's going to be right up there with the Italian Prime Minister.
We're going to be the one country left with like surely if every other country can produce one, surely we can produce somebody.
No, we can't.
Well, okay, on the front of local politics. If we want to talk about Dutton, right? Let's talk about Dutton for a moment. The problem with Dutton is he is.
You're saying his name wrong. It's Lord Voldemort.
I knew you'd do that. I knew that. The problem is, he's got as much charisma as a rock. Okay, that's the problem.
He's still got more than Slimeball.
Oh, I don't know.
But, the problem with Australian politics is this: that the opposition is not presenting an opposition.
Spot on.
That's the whole issue. You're not giving the voting public a reason to actually back you. That's the problem they've got.
I do agree with you, but at the same time, let's be honest. If he was charismatic, people would vote for him, right? Now,
they had John Howard for 3 terms. He wasn't that charismatic.
And he couldn't even bowl a cricket ball.
He was boring, right?
Dutton, I've met Dutton a number of times.
And he's a very nice guy.
Yeah, he's lovely, and he's way more charismatic in person. I don't get it. I don't actually understand why he comes across in the media the way he does, because he's actually... You know, like I actually quite like the bloke
You've
personally.
actually made my point. I don't know why, but you're right. On video, he comes across
that way. But the thing is, the Liberals, as you're rightly pointing out, what's the opposition? Like, you do a poll about the disinformation bill, right? So what is it, like 85% of Australians or some crap? What was the number that we saw the other day? It was the overwhelming majority of Australians totally opposed the misinformation bill.
Yep.
So the Liberal Party looks at that information and goes, oh, well, wouldn't it be a really good idea if we go and support the bill that the Labor Party is putting forward?
Yeah.
And they did it in West Australia too. When they wanted mask mandates and all this sort of stuff going on, they came out and said, well, they're not doing enough. And it's like, are you for real? They went further. They doubled down. And this is the problem, is they're going too far left to try to appease. They need to go conservative. They need to
The world
swing back.
is rejecting the left, okay?
So
wake up.
This
wake
is
up.
where it gets really frustrating. So if you can't vote for the majors because they're the same thing, you go to the minor party. So Greens, whatever, the Nationals also were calling for mask mandates 6 months prior to the majors.
Really?
So, like, who have you got left over?
Joel Jamal shows that big graph, that sort of thing that he's got on.
It.
Where is it?
Right.
In the other room.
Now, when he first showed that to me, because he came over to my house and he brought it with him and he showed it to me, and I was looking at that and I was like, "There's no way."
Lays out the entire campaign.
Explain the graph for those who don't know what
I'll go get it.
What the graph did. What the graph does is it shows you the differences and the commonalities between all the parties, like what they vote for, etc. While Travis is getting it.
Travis, wrong room, mate. You'll go into the news office.
And so I actually asked him one time, I've been thinking about it for months. It was just on my mind. I was like, this can't be. So I said to him, I said, look, are you asking questions in such a way that you know that those are the things they have in common and the other ones don't, that sort of stuff? And I sort of really looked through all the work he'd done, and I was like, no, like that's totally legitimate. It's totally legitimate. Like there was only 3 or 4 things where the Labor and Liberal Nationals actually disagreed.
Crazy.
And I thought, well, what's the difference there?
Well, I hate when the opposition just disagrees for the sake of disagreeing, right? Because when it just becomes that negative from one side to the other. But
I don't agree with that at all.
Okay.
No. I think most eye-opening is that the very things that I won't say most of us, but people like me who say, I just want government out of the way, I want to be left alone, stop infringing my rights, who do you think you are?
Yep.
When you actually look at those parties, they are both pretty much the same. And, most people are pretty unhappy with the way COVID was handled, especially in Sydney and Victoria. The mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, all that sort of stuff, the way the police handled protests, all of those sorts of things. But what you actually find is that the major parties, they agree with each other on how things should be handled.
Well, it's the old story about, there's the 2 wings on the same bird, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's an article that's come out. Since we've got to bring in Australia, I was going to bring in it later, but we might as well since we're here. There was headlines today on news.com.au, Australia's move as Donald Trump launches trade war with new tariffs on Canada, Mexico, China. Australia is seeking talks with America as soon as is humanly possible after Donald Trump slapped new tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. Now, this article is making out that basically Australian Trade Minister Don Farrell is wanting that chat to be planned, cool, calm, collected, as he's put it, wanting to have that audience with them and acting like they're really nervous about the whole situation.
Oh, come on.
I think what you got to realize here is that, look, I don't mind it if Australian politicians are sweating it a bit because of their relations with the US. I think that's probably a healthy thing. But we are not on the border of the United States, okay? We're not like Canada and Mexico, who are right there sharing that same fence. And I think that's the big issue that we've got to look at. However, having said that, as I think it was stated earlier, I think in one of our previous shows, that, look, Australians are going to basically, where's the US going, and then form their policy accordingly for strategic military reasons, not only for their own economy.
No question about that. Now, can I ask, Travis, a bit of a favour here? Can you just bring up some of the questions and comments, just because I really do love when we've got the audience being,
there's a lot coming through on this show,
exactly,
which is
right. So, as part of the conversation, I do want to sort of refer to people as they come through as much as we can.
So, Deploy on YouTube, I've been saying this, they are similar parties for ages, but at best, Libs wait 5 years before enacting Labor policies. So they're just waiting 5 years before they actually go ahead with them.
Okay.
I'm yet to see a Labor policy that Liberals have retracted except the carbon tax.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So I'm sure there is some. I just don't know where they are.
The other comment about the fact that they don't work for us is a very, very good point. They don't represent the everyday Australian.
Yeah, they've just totally lost track of everything. And then we've got Josh McCurry, absolute legend, long-time listener. Hey, Josh. The issue I have with Joel's analysis is that it assumes that we want the Libs to get elected. Bah, humbug. They are WEF stooges as bad as Labor.
And I think, Josh makes a good point there. I think that's how a lot of people are seeing it right now, is that Labor and Liberal are really the same party no matter which one you vote,
A lot of people
which Travis has been pointing out. What are the alternatives?
I've heard a great...
I just want to correct something there, just in defense of Joel, because obviously Joel's a friend of mine. I just want to say, Josh, just with your analysis there, Joel actually recommended in many of the electorates in Sydney that people voted for the Labor Party over the Liberal candidates because of the Liberal candidates' position. So I don't think he's making that assumption, but many of the people that he gets on his show, such as myself, just want Labor gone. And whatever party you like say, a small party like Christian Family First or, One Nation or Shooters and Farmers and all the rest of it, they're not going to become the Prime Minister. They're not going to control government, right? So the only choice you've got essentially is the Labor Greens coalition or the coalition of the Libs and Nationals. So what choice do you have? But I'll leave it at that. But yeah,
here's a daring idea. How many of our voters actually go, let's say they want Liberal in or the coalition in, but they'll say, hey, I'll give my preferences to these minor parties who won't get in, and then give my second preferences to the ones I do want.
Well, that's what I do. Yeah. Well, that's what I've started doing. But what the thing with the Liberal Party, the reason I criticise them way more than Labor is, don't really care. Labor, I'm not going to. Well, I've never voted for them. I won't say I never will. Maybe I would one day. I just can't imagine why I would. But so, okay, I disagree with them. Well, that's fine. We know I disagree with them. What really pisses me off is when the Liberals don't act in the way that I want them to or the way that most people want them to, and then we're stuck because we've got no one else to vote for. That's just taking the piss.
It is.
Right? And that's how the Teals lost. So that's how the Teals won all of those blue ribbon seats in North Sydney and etc.
So one thing that I'd love to see is for people who do the donkey votes, like if you don't want to vote for any party at all, that's fine. Don't vote for them. But please do not go in there go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, no.
Because you're voting for the number one seat. It's not that you don't care. You're just giving the money to them. In the 2018 election, it actually worked out to be something like 2% of the votes.
Is that right?
Yeah. So you're on average between 12 to 15% people donkey vote or just don't rock up.
Sure. So
straight away you've lost 15%. But if you can pick up a full 2% and you're that's 4% swing just by being that number one position.
How do you feel about voting not being compulsory?
I love it. I think it should be that way because why waste everyone's time if you're not going to vote properly?
Well, if you don't want to show up, I don't think you should have to vote.
Yeah,
I think you should. I think you should because universal suffrage has been fought for so hard. Right. So you should vote, but you shouldn't be legally required to.
Yes, you should. I think that. But at the same time, I used to always be for compulsory voting because I want people to be involved in the process.
Yeah, but what I want, two different things. Why should what you want mean that I have to do it?
Well, hang on. Here's where I'm going on this. Is that, okay, over the years, now I'm starting to think, no, maybe it shouldn't be compulsory. Maybe I want only people who are engaged in the process, people who actually care, people who have done their research. I want them to vote. I don't want the idiots who go in there and draw stupid things on the pictures.
So
right? Okay,
your vote of I don't care should be a valid vote. And if you don't care, don't rock up.
Yeah.
But see, that's the other thing, right? If voter turnout's really low, then you know that people... Okay, let's take this recent election in the United States, right? Kamala Harris didn't get the turnout. That was the major thing. She didn't get the turnout in many of the demographics that she was expecting to get the turnout for. That says something. It means a lot of those people didn't want to vote for Donald Trump, but they weren't inspired by Kamala Harris.
Yeah, but she's such an inspirational woman.
So here we should have the same thing. If Liberal Party people don't go out to vote for Dutton, but there's a low turnout, what that indicates is that they still don't like Albanese, but they just weren't inspired by him. Do you know what I'm saying?
Look, Albanese got in, what was it, 32% of the vote this time? 32, I think it was.
Yes, the country is not running the way that the 32% voted for.
So that means like 68% of the country didn't want him. Let's remember that.
I know, we turned into New Zealand.
I don't. I mean,
because remember with Jacinta the first time, Jacinta Ardern, or Dame Ardern, she won the election with like 35% or something like that. And we were all sitting there going, how does that work? How does that happen? It could never happen in Australia.
We can do it.
Yeah, we can do it better.
Hold our beer.
Absolutely.
So we've got a couple of comments from Josh and Taz that we probably need to have a look at.
Okay.
Josh really gets into his politics. So I have an issue with the way the preferential voting. I think you should be able to mark your preferences as far as you want.
You can.
You can. What happens once let's say there's 8 people there, you only do 6. Your vote is valid until the 6th, and then it becomes informal.
Right.
So again, just understanding the system, how it works is really important. And this is the other crazy thing. They change it every year. So you've got to check the rules every year, which is annoying. But if they don't want a set candidate to get your vote, you shouldn't be forced to give it to one of them. So I'm assuming that's talking about the upper house where you can vote above the line or below the line.
Okay.
So in the let's say you vote below the line. So let's say you've got candidate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for a party. You don't like, say, candidate number 2. So you can go 1, skip number 2, and go 2, 3, 4 for the rest. So that number 2 candidate won't get your vote. But if you vote above the line, you just put the 1 in the party will decide which order the votes go down.
Yeah.
So,
okay, fantastic. A lot of things we want to cover today, so I want to jump back to that.
I want to get back to Trump's.
Sorry, just quickly to Josh. That's been around for about 2017, the first federal election I run. It's been that way since then. So as long as you've got a clear 1, not a crosses or ticks, a clear 1, it is valid until there's nowhere to put your preferences. Then it becomes informal.
Okay. The other change that I would actually like to see is that the cabinet positions are directly voted by the public instead of nominated by the government.
Wow.
Because it would cause government not to be a cohesive group, right? Like you look at the United States, the executive don't sit in the House of Reps or the Senate, right? They leave that in order to take cabinet positions. So the executive sits outside the legislature.
Right.
Here, the executive branch of government is also sitting in the House of Representatives, usually, or sometimes in the Senate, but usually the House of Reps. So instead of doing that, if you separated them out from the House of Representatives, it changes things dramatically because then it's a check on that branch of government.
Right.
And what I would say differently to the US is rather than letting the president or the prime minister nominate who they want, let the people vote.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, Australians don't do their research on the candidates.
It can't be any worse than what we got now.
No. Yeah. No.
Let's have a look at Trump's response to Canada, if we could, in the next slide here. It's interesting, his response and how he plays this game.
Okay.
So he wrote here on True Social, we pay hundreds of billions of dollars to subsidize Canada. Why? There is no reason. We don't need anything they have. We have unlimited energy, should make our own cars, and have more lumber than we can ever use. Without this massive subsidy, Canada ceases to exist. It's a viable country. Harsh, but true. Therefore, Canada should become our cherished 51st state, much lower taxes and far better military protection for the people of Canada, and no tariffs. He's pushing the point there.
Well, he is. And and let's think about the strategic advantage to getting Canada as well. I suppose they've got Alaska anyway. So
they bought that off the Russians back in the day. Florida was bought off the Spanish.
Yep.
Well, he can buy Canada off the Chinese.
Sorry?
Yeah.
He can buy Canada and Australia off the Chinese.
I was going to say buy it off Cuba, but yeah. Hey.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, strategy 101, right? Let's face it.
Just buy everything. Print more money and buy it all.
Hey, on that front, okay.
Does inflation matter when you own everything?
No, it doesn't. But on that front, okay, what about national debts, right? Okay, what's to stop a country, especially a country like America, that has all that military power, just going, guess what? We don't have a debt anymore. What's to stop that?
The rest of the world.
Why?
No, that would destroy the economy because all the investment would rush out of that country.
Right, that's what I'm asking the question. Okay, I'm not asking just to be facetious. I'm wondering about that. Like,
So what ends up happening is that the country that is importing won't be able to import anything because their currency won't be worth anything.
Right. Okay.
When they export stuff, the money can be prevented from getting into that country because they owe debts to other countries.
Right.
And this is where some of these vulture funds, something that I would never do, never be involved in.
Right.
And I won't name some of the high-profile people that are involved in some of this stuff. What they would do is they'd go in and they'd buy up the debt for pennies on the dollar for emerging countries that are struggling.
Yep.
And then what they would do is this charity money was being given to the country to feed the poor people. They would come in and take the money.
We've seen this.
Right. So, it'd be bad. Like it's not a positive thing at all.
Right.
And especially if it happened to a superpower. So if it was the UK, the US, Canada and Australia, though we're not anywhere near their size, but if any of us did that, it would be so destabilizing, but especially if it was the US.
Okay. So. There you go. All right.
Well, there's a simple comparison for that one: Ukraine and Russia.
Mhm.
Like, have a look at what happened once Russia invaded Ukraine, and that was
Which
a minor
level.
yeah, no, that was a minor disturbance when you have a look at it. Let's say America turn around and say, "All right, we're going to take over the world," or whatever. Have a look at the disruption that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
look at the economy of Russia, right? Forget about the Ukraine war. Let's go before that.
Okay.
Look at the economy of Russia. Now, they defaulted, let's say, back in the early 2000s, the late 90s, whatever it was. But what they said was the USSR was the one that borrowed this money. We're Russia. Anymore. We're not the USSR. USSR broke up. Take it up with them.
Yeah.
But that left the rest of the world going, okay. So they really have had a fairly, well, they haven't had the sort of economic success as, say, other former USSR countries have, comparative, per capita and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, pretty bad idea.
Oh, there you go.
Let's have a look at what Trump's coming out with. He's looking at even more tariffs, and he brings up an interesting industry. Just, you got to listen close to this one, what he's talking about.
In addition to that, and you see the power of the tariff. I mean, the tariff is good, and nobody can compete with us because we have by far the biggest piggy bank. And so that'll take place very quickly. But also we'll be doing pharmaceuticals. And to bring our industry back, we want to bring pharmaceuticals back to the country. And the way you bring it back to the country is by putting up a wall, and the wall is a tariff wall. We were the richest country in the world. We were at our richest from 1870 to 1913. That's when we were a tariff country.
There you go, pharmaceuticals. He's wanting to put in pharmaceuticals in his own borders, and make America healthy again through that process. So that's really, really interesting. We'll get to this one in just a moment. But
I've been talking about that last handful of years.
Sorry?
I've been talking about that last handful of years about penicillin and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So there you go. Trump wants to put tariffs on medications. And this, of course, was really, really interesting when you compare this to Congress looking at the going through the Robert Kennedy Jr. I don't know if you saw some of the footage where they were interviewing him or scrutinizing him, basically.
It was almost hilarious, actually.
Yeah, it was great fun to watch how they were in a panic, and then it came out how much they'd all been paid to from the pharmaceuticals over the last few years.
In fact, if you go to the Edge Radio Australia Facebook page, we actually have a post that lists all the top, or basically the amounts were donated from Big Pharma and who actually received them. And guess what? Geez, there seems to be a pattern. It's Democrat, 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 Democrat. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, look, to be fair, Republicans get lobbied money as well. But
no question about
it. But I want to say this, though. You know, if you think about cigarettes or tobacco, like all the other stuff that we've said, right? The reason why media was always kind of a bit left was that they were always fighting, or at least appeared to be fighting, for the little guy, right? Which was that when big corporations were abusing the populace, when big government was taking money from the populace, you have these fantastic investigative reports. And, you know, a lot of people in media were kind of against big corporations doing, what they're doing to little people.
It was the case, wasn't it?
Now, Democrats are like going for the big corporations, and it's Republicans saying, hang on a minute, we want sugar out of our food. We want the big corporations to tell us what they're putting in our food, what they're feeding our kids. Yeah, and the Democrats are like, well, we're fighting for the little guy. Look at how many big celebrities and CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are backing us. Huh?
I know.
I don't get it.
It blows you mind. I mean, hypocrisy is basically what the left is running on.
But then you've got to apply that here to Australia as well. Look at how many of the big Australian companies flooded behind the Labor Party. Why? See, if you said that 20 years ago, people would be like, why would the big corporations and big business want to support Labor? They would want to support the business-friendly Liberal Party.
But it has flipped now. Absolutely, it is flipped.
So what's Labor going to do? We are working for the big company that we're going to fight for you against. Like, what?
No, makes no sense at all.
We want to look at what Russia is actually saying, and this is a fascinating little interview piece in the back of a car. Let's have a listen to what Putin has to say. Of course, it's in subtitles.
All right, just let me get the
chat with the subtitles
out of the way.
Might be interesting on the radio, but we'll give it a go.
Has something changed since Biden's time? Nothing has
No, you got to play the
changed.
video.
So I'm just reading the translations for people. They were happy to carry out, this is Putin talking, they're happy to carry out any order from Washington under Biden.
С удовольствием выполняли любой приказ со стороны Вашингтона при Байдене. Просто
They just don't like Trump. They fought him actively, really interfered in political life in the election process in the United States.
Они с ним боролись активно, да?
That's a
Реально
nice car. Is
вмешивались
that a
в
Maybach?
политическую жизнь и предвыборный процесс в Соединенных Штатах, а потом растеряли.
And when they were confused, what? And
And then
they were confused when Trump suddenly won. Just on that one, it was really interesting having a look at the raw voting. The Trump's vote never changed, but the Democrats' vote dropped drastically.
Right?
Yeah.
Трамп вдруг выиграл. И
And then they mentally liked Biden more, mentally.
потом Байден ментально им больше нравился, понимаете, ментально. А у Трампа
But Trump has different ideas about what is good, what is bad, including in gender policy. In some other issues, they kind of don't like it.
другие представления о том, что такое хорошо, что такое плохо, в том числе в этой гендерной политике, в некоторых других вопросах. Им как бы не нравится это. Но я
But I assure you, Trump, with his character persistence, he will restore order pretty quickly.
уверяю,
What a
Трамп с
comment.
его характером, с его настойчивостью, он наведет там порядок довольно быстро. И все
And all of them, you'll see, it will happen quickly soon. All of them will stand at their master's feet and gently wag their tails. Wow, what a comment.
быстро, скоро, все они станут у ноги хозяина и будут нежно помахивать хвостиком.
I think it's fascinating to see that one. There's again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think Putin admires Trump. I think there's an admiration right there, because Trump, you remember in his first term, didn't come out criticizing Putin. People were trying to make Russia look the bad guy, and he's going, "What will be your response when you're president?" He's like, "I've never met the man." So he's kind of. It was a smart play on his move, and I think he's always respected that. The second part of that is, I love the comment of the tails will be wagging behind them. Is he referring to the European Union there? Ooh. It's going to be really interesting to see how the EU relates to Trump in this matter. He's already kind of blasted them at the World Economic Forum with his big speech and live cross there, telling them what's what, telling them what we are doing and how it's all fantastic, leaving them devastated. And there was actually footage of them saying, we got to, in their discussion panels, we've got to admit it. Trump won, which means we lost.
Yeah.
It's an amazing admission by the World Economic Forum.
So true on that.
So we've got a few comments coming through with this one. So we've got Josh here. The US pardon doesn't protect Fauci from being tried for crimes against humanity at the ICC, just saying.
Yep.
The Democratic vote dropped because they can't hide enough cheating without the pandemic and the postal votes.
No, but her vote count actually dropped below previous. So 2020 was either an absolute rigged scam or it was just an anomaly, depending on who you listen to. But
and then
the Biden guy, he was the most popular president around. He got the most votes ever.
Yeah,
of course,
and Donald Trump was the most popular loser too by that metric. But if you actually have a look, Donald Trump's votes have been pretty much the same. It's been pretty close. There was that big jump up in Biden's vote, but even if you look prior, the votes are about they sort of sit there pretty steadily for both sides. So, but her vote is actually lower than what, if you forget about 2020, is actually lower than the others as well.
There was on, it wasn't Fox News, it was one of the less media's, NBC. They did a tally on what states Camilla's actually done better than Biden. CNN, was it? Yeah. And there was nothing.
Jake Tapper mustn't have known, because when he came out and said, show me if there's any, show me what counties, it wasn't states. Yeah. Show me what counties she's had an increase in the vote since 2020 by 2% or 3%, what it was. And the sort of screen came up and he's like, hang on. And they're like trying to move something off the screen. And he's like, nothing, like absolutely, not one.
Yes,
not one.
Embarrassing. So embarrassing.
So I've got a theory on this one. A total theory, no evidence, no proof. So this is probably false information. So there's a falling out when Biden got kicked out between Jill Biden and the Democrats.
Of course.
So my theory is Jill Biden's the one that actually that organized all the rigging. They've turned around, we need you to rig this one as well. She's like, get stuffed. And so what's happened, they didn't get all the rigging done through the Biden family because they were nasty on the Democrats.
I don't know. So there's a lot to be said about that. And I think Jill Biden had far more to do with these elections than,
she's running the show.
She showed up in a red dress to vote or something like that.
That was impressive, wasn't it?
That sent a pretty big message.
Yeah. Statement 101.
But just on that rigging thing, look, I don't know if yet there's any evidence that's been brought up. Let me finish. there's any evidence that's been brought up that shows that there was fictitious votes cast.
Yeah.
What my major concern is that the system, even if you're one of those people that doesn't think that it was rigged as such, the one thing you got to concede is that they changed the electoral rules. So Pennsylvania, for example, the judiciary changed the rules that they had no right to do that. That's up to the legislature. So I think the Democrats gamed the system, and I think that there should be an inquiry, as Ted Cruz talked about. Yeah. And those massive vote dumps that came in, one of the things that I'm concerned about is it not that those votes weren't real, but that real Republican votes were never delivered? Is that what happened? Do you know what I mean? Because
there was a lot of Democrats who were voting at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, right?
Exactly, and there was some report. I'm sort of going from memory here. There was some report that one of the vote dumps came in 300,000 votes for Biden, 0 votes for Trump.
Yeah,
like that doesn't happen. Like we know that that's not mathematically possible. No matter how you slice and dice society, you're never going to find a demographic of 300 to 0, 300,000 to 0.
Correct.
Yep.
So
from Diplo, advertising inevitably
corrupts the media. A good start would be to ban farmer adverts like Australia.
Yeah, great point. Absolutely great point. But also to remember this during the pandemic that you got 2 years tax free from a media as a media outlet. So you did not pay tax for 2 years if you ran the campaigns for the government.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
so
utter corruption as far as I'm concerned.
That's true.
So Taz getting in on the voting thing. It's in the subject of voting from before. I think it should be mandatory. The current population of US is 34.9 million.
I think she means 349 million.
Yeah,
apparently 90 million didn't vote. So
no, that's never going to happen.
Hang on, in America,
the United States, it's you can't force people to do that.
Yeah, well, hang on, there's about
freedom.
There's about 150 odd million votes, roughly,
off
the top of my head, and of course, there's about 360 million there. So yeah, a lot of people don't vote for. So I do actually want to throw to Derek for some last thoughts, basically, for today.
Well, the world are on their tippy toes, wondering how they're going to respond to this and how they're going to solve it. As I said before, Trump is making it hurt in the back pocket and going, listen, if you don't change your policies, we didn't even get into the discussion on how this affects China, but it's going to just sort of, he's throwing his weight around as far as I am the US president and I know it. And I think it really is taking back his power for the country, for the people. And the world is trying to figure out, well, what do we do from here? They're not used to dealing with businessmen. They're used to dealing with some diplomat.
That's right.
And he is not interested in being a career politician.
No. Well, it's a hell of a pay cut, let's face it, right?